Hello, everybody. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the third Solar Cities webinar on community engagement. I'm Jonathan Bonadio, Senior Policy Advisor at Solar Power Europe, and I will have the pleasure to accompany you today for the next hour on a journey from Brussels, from Freiburg to Spain, especially, and to other countries to talk about community engagement in solar projects. So, why community engagement and why are we tackling this topic in particular today? I mean, as you are probably all aware of, the EU has recently agreed to reach a high share of renewables, 42.5% plus 2.5% top up in final consumption. And for solar, it would mean multiplying by three our installation by 2030. So in only 6 years, multiplying by almost three the amount of power installed. So I'm talking here from Brussels, but you know that solar PV doesn't happen in Brussels. Solar PV happens at local level. So therefore, cities, local authorities, communities are the perfect candidate to accelerate the transition, to supply their citizens with secure, affordable, and sustainable energy. But there is about the multiplication of renewables and solar will need to go hand in hand with a reinforced participation of public, to guarantee that citizens can be empowered, and of course to keep the right buy-in, the right support from the public to solar and renewable solutions in general. So therefore, we have discussed it with our partners here at ICLE Europe and Energy Cities, and we are proposing a webinar to discuss the different models of local engagement in solar projects. And to discuss this topic, we have quite a thrilling agenda today. On the next slide, we can see that we will have Arthur Hinch from ICLE Europe, Sustainable Energy System, Senior Expert in Sustainable Energy System, ICLE Europe. We have Branislav Milshin, Innovation Manager at E.ON, Arturo Thea Falcon, Energy Officer at the City of Valencia, Ajon Lazarczyk, VP Marketing and Growth, and CleanWatt to discuss good practices, good projects of community engagement. So I'm quite thrilled to welcome you today to discuss these topics. But before we start the webinar, I would like to remind you of a few housekeeping rules. So first of all, for the audience, you will have the possibility to ask your question via the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. And we will, after the presentation, we will introduce the questions to the speakers. So thanks for your patience in advance for waiting for the questions. Then the speakers, I mean, as we discussed, please turn on your camera speaking, turn off when not speaking. I will turn on my camera when you have 1 minute left. So when you see my face, it means that you will have to hurry up for a presentation. And we'll have 10 minutes for each presentation. There will be, after intervention, a short poll for you to participate. So really for the audience, for our guests today to participate. So we count on your participation. And last but not least, I'm happy to tell you that we are going to share the presentation and video after the webinar, so you don't have to take notes. You just have to relax, fasten your seatbelts. And now it's my pleasure to introduce and to welcome Arthur Inch from ICLE Europe for a few words of introduction to this webinar. Arthur, please, the floor is yours.
Yes, thanks a lot, Jonathan, and hello also from my side, from our side at ICLE Europe. ICLE, for everybody's information, is a global network of local and regional governments for sustainability, and I myself work at ICLE Europe, which is based in Freiburg, Germany. Indeed, as Jonathan said, specifically on sustainable energy systems. Now, I have the pleasure of saying a few words before we jump into this very interesting webinar. Specifically on community engagement. Now, why am I so excited about this webinar? We have an excellent selection of different best practices, good practices and best practices, all of them, on how to engage with the local community. And I think it helps a lot to ask again, why is this so important? And why is it so important now? We all know, of course, that over the last many years, while the energy transition has advanced significantly, we're still not there. And actually, well, when it comes to the deployment of infrastructure, issues such as long permitting lead times, but also the lack of local enthusiasm, as I would like to call it, or lack of local acceptance, is still a huge issue. So many of you might have heard of the term NIMBYism, not in my backyardism. There is a clear lack of perceived local benefits often when it comes to the deployment of, well, much different infrastructure and also renewable energy infrastructure. Now, why is it especially now important to think about this? Of course, quite recently, with the recast of the Renewable Energy Directive, we now have very ambitious goals when it comes to the designation of so-called renewable energy acceleration areas. Together with that, there has been introduced a principle regarding overriding public interest, which means that renewable energies are considered to be in the overriding public interest, and member states can actually use this principle when it comes to legal disputes for promoting renewable energy infrastructure. Now, while we're all very excited that there are some clear signs that this can lead to an accelerated energy transition, there's also clear signs that the moment any deployment of infrastructure, large infrastructure specifically, but also renewable energy infrastructure, takes place without the proper involvement of local communities, then, well, first, you will not have an accelerated renewable energy transition. And even in those cases where you do manage to push an accelerated renewable energy infrastructure through, it will be a fast renewable energy infrastructure, but it will not necessarily be a fair renewable energy infrastructure. And it's very important to remind us that on a European level, the leave no one behind principle, the just transition principle, is very, very, very important. It's actually at the cornerstone of what Europe is trying to do with regards to well, the energy transition. Now, what we do see on the local level, of course, is that there are many citizens who are very keen on being part of all of this. They're so-called energy citizens, right? So there are people who really want to be engaged in the energy transition, to feel a clear sense of responsibility towards them and towards future generations, and want to make use of the opportunity as energy citizens to support. At the same time, of course, we have to understand that while ultimately, of course, it would be great that we have a lot of many different energy citizens, so to speak, that Europe's citizens are really taking up the initiative here and to participate actively in community engagement schemes and any different forms of ways of doing this. We also have to understand that the energy market, of course, has to deliver electricity and energy, because we talk about electricity and heat here, to millions of people, right? And the extent to which community participation and engagement schemes will be able to include everyone is honestly still a little bit in the stars. So I think when we talk about citizen-led, we really have to focus about asking key questions such as how can we make sure that the energy transition actually benefits most or all of European citizens, and especially those who are in vulnerable situations, rather than just a select few. We know that there's many different ways, and we will hear some today of how community participation can materialize on the local level in different kind of renewable energy projects. And very often we hear the term energy communities, renewable energy communities. But also there are other community benefit schemes. And I think it's quite important to understand that there is quite a large variety of how local communities can be engaged, so that ultimately the energy transition really has a local social and financial value. We also have to understand that, for instance, when it comes to energy communities, they are an amazing concept. And certainly from our side, we've been engaged for a very long time now in promoting, especially the role of local public authorities in promoting energy communities for local citizens and with local citizens together. We also have to understand that there's some evidence that such as recently in our Empower project, for instance, that many people are while they might be interested in energy communities, they are not necessarily interested in leading energy communities. Often it's a matter of asking how can you use this beautiful concept of an energy community, for instance, by reaching as many people as possible, but also understanding that many people will be happy with just being beneficiaries of such kind of schemes. That is important to consider. That's why we need all kinds of different forms of energy communities as long as certain safeguards are safeguarded. This idea of it being a local entity and local ownership. But we also need other kind of community benefit schemes, and we need hybrids. We need collaboration between the public sector and the private sector, and we need municipalities and we need public authorities and certain service providers to act as so-called trusted intermediaries for local citizens who want to be engaged in the energy transition, but do not necessarily have the time to do it themselves. That's why municipalities and, as we will hear later, but also service providers are key in promoting that. Yeah, so ultimately we have to ask ourselves, how can we make the energy transition fast, but also fair? And you can expect to hear much more from on this particular topic, on these particular issues from our side in the future. But for now, I very much look forward to the presentation, to hearing from all of you what are community engagement schemes that you deem to be effective, but also you can look forward to a beautiful webinar about, well, exactly that, different forms of community engagement. And you can expect to hear much more from us in the near future on that as well. So, Jonathan, thanks a lot. Back to you, and feel free to start the poll.
Thanks indeed, Archer, for this introduction. And very good. I keep in mind two elements that really strike me here. Local enthusiasm versus local acceptance. I think it's a very good wording that we have here. I mean, really gathering sufficient enthusiasm and energy from local citizens to building and to have energy infrastructure in their background, but also it's like backyard, sorry, but also the necessity of fair and just transition. So something that you recall, and thanks for recalling this, because this is, of course, utmost importance in the energy transition. So it's now my pleasure to introduce you the people in the audience, which are our guests, our dear guests, which are listening to us and watching us today. We will introduce a short poll just to take a bit of temperature and see a bit how you see energy community engagement and how you see citizen engagement in solar projects from your perspective, from your side. So this will help also guide us through the webinar. So now our colleague will display the poll. So you should be able to see the poll in front of you. So you have a questionnaire. So what we will ask you is to choose two, and please be fair and play the game. Choose only two options here on what are the two most important factors for you for successful engagement of local communities. So two factors which are the most important for you. I just know that the panelists and the hosts cannot vote, but we will of course give it a question afterwards. So 5 answers possible. You have to choose 2 of them. First of all, is it the consultation during the planning and mapping of acceleration areas, eligible areas for solar deployment, what Arthur mentioned today? Second option is the communication and consultation during the design of the project. So before the project gets built, but after the planning phase has happened, and the environmental impact assessment. Third option is it involvement of citizens in the financing of the project, for instance, through crowdfunding, participatory financing schemes. Number 4 is direct participation of citizens with shares in a project, for instance, via community energy schemes. And last but not least, is it about distance of consumption or energy sharing when it comes to, for instance, having preferential energy tariffs? So please choose 2 options out of 5, and we will display the results in 1 minute, 30 seconds, just to show a bit what you are at. As I mentioned, 5 options. First, consultation planning. Second, communication during the design. Third, financing. Fourth, shares in a project, for instance, via community schemes. Or 5, energy sharing. The 2 most important when it comes to public engagement. So we count on your responses here, and we will leave 20 seconds, and then we will close the polls and show the results. Ten seconds to choose 2 options for you, and then we will show the results. Thanks again for your participation. Okay, the poll is now closed, and then we have interesting, very interesting results. First of all, I mean, I will take a snapshot of the poll because I will keep it as well for our future discussions. But in a nutshell, I mean, the majority of you have voted for consultation, either during planning phase and communication during the design. Direct participation of citizens in the project, also a very important element. And then distance of consumption, energy sharing, it's more, it hasn't the same support, let's say. I mean, we have only one quarter in terms of percentage of reply. And financing, very interestingly, doesn't seem to be the most important element. So really, consultation and communication before the project, and then direct participation as the two elements. So with this, let me introduce you to our first speaker, Vladislav Milchin, our innovation manager at E.ON, who will talk about one of these options, actually, one of the options from the polls that you see, which is energy sharing, and present a case study from E.ON on developing new models of community participation. Vlad, the floor is yours. Thanks.
Thanks, Jonathan. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. Right, so with this, I would like to start my presentation. Sorry for short delay. So I come here on behalf of E.ON Group Innovation. It's an entity that belongs to the E.ON Group company and is based in Essen. And we support our E.ON regional units with implementing new innovative approaches to tackling their day-to-day challenges. And on behalf of this company, I would like to present you our initiative that we have been driving since a couple of years, testing energy sharing, collective self-consumption offering in Spain. Sorry. So how many of EU residents live in apartment buildings? More than 70% of population, in fact, lives in condominiums. And up until now, quite recently, the regulations have been the main blocker to allow this part of society, which is quite substantial, to access solar energy for the residents. The concept of energy sharing, as we see it, as a game changer in making solar energy accessible and affordable for everyone. With this in mind, the task of E.ON, of the initiative that I'm about to present, was to create an appealing proposition for energy sharing with end consumers and tested by rapidly acquiring customers. Another expected outcome on our side was to prove that the offering is accepted and that there is a scalable market for such products. A test market, as I've already mentioned briefly, was in Spain. And as E.ON is not present there, we had to create a new brand from scratch in order to launch the energy sharing proposition. From the initial market research, we have come to the conclusion that the brand for our proposition should be based on the following values. First of all, it has to be local, as we aim to bring community together and involve them in local sustainability efforts. To truly be practical and walk the talk, the brand must also embody and promote sustainability. Authenticity is crucial as well, because we want to connect with local community on an emotional level. Last but not least, we wanted to bring people together, so that the brand needed to be inclusive and engaging. Sorry. Having said that, apologies. Having said that, I would like to introduce you to the brand called Adeja Verde. It is local, sustainable, and authentic. So it is inclusive, so specifically designed to target the market in the municipality of Adeja on the island of Tenerife. The brand was endorsed by the mayor of Adeja, and then the initiative was treated as the innovation project for the city. And as part of this engagement between E.ON and Adeja municipality, we made a joint contribution to the decarbonization by establishing an innovative energy community or energy sharing scheme. As a matter of fact, Canary Islands has a goal to transition all the islands to 100% renewables by 2040. The city viewed this project as means to engage with local community, sharing sustainability goals and benefits with the residents. The first energy community, as part of this innovation project, was built around the PV plant on the rooftop of a music school. So it's a publicly owned building. It was the first energy sharing scheme of its kind in Europe and to that date, and the biggest solar circle in Spain, connecting about 200 consumers to a solar PV production unit within the 5-meter radius circle, which was defined by the regulations at that point in time. The solution has enabled residents and local entity to produce, share, as well as collectively used renewable electricity. As part of this community setup, this project has helped us to test the proposition for the consumers and local branding approach to attract the critical mass of customers. We have identified 2,000 residents in the circle of 500-meter radius from the PV plant, and we have targeted these residents to join the energy sharing scheme and get their share of PV generation or PV electricity. As part of various marketing campaigns, we have planned a final grand opening event of the PV plant where 200 residents have come to join this activity. At the event, with the presence of the city mayor, we managed to directly subscribe about 170 members to the energy sharing scheme of this PV plant installed on the rooftop of the music school. So the uptake was quite successful. So during this project, we have learned that local branding approach to establish energy communities can become beneficial for all stakeholders involved. So for the city, it provides a sustainability platform for public relations so that the city leaders can get an additional channel to communicate their objectives with local community and try to involve this local community to share the city goals as well as the benefits. At the same time, it does not require much of effort from the municipality, and the concept implemented ensures, of course, alignment with the market rules as private companies is involved. And then on the side of private actors like E.ON, having the backing of the city has, of course, been definitely a success, let's say, part of the brand success, so that we could increase the trust from the city residents to the offering provided by through this brand. So this allowed us to test commercial offering at a higher pace than it could have been done without such a brand being in place, and of course identify the scale-up opportunities. So with this, I would like to hand over to Jonathan, I guess. Thanks for your attention.
Thanks a lot, Vlad, for this intervention, and great to see this collaboration also between the private sector and municipalities. Talking now about municipalities, my pleasure to welcome on stage, if I can speak so, Arturo Cea Falcón, the energy officer of the city of Valencia. will present the local authorities as facilitator of the energy transition and the solar transition. Arturo, please, the floor is yours. Thanks.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Jonathan, for your kind words. Okay, let's start with the presentation. I will just explain here the main role that a city can act as facilitator for deploying energy sharing models, different ones. First of all, I wanted to tell you that this is all framed in a European project called Power Up, in which we take part. First of all, we represent the Valencia Climate and Energy Foundation. So we are a municipal foundation, 100%. We help the municipality with the design and the implementation of mitigation and adaptation to climate change projects and strategies. So the main goal of this project, and one of the main strategies for the city, is to promote social energy market players, which are based locally and that can make accessible renewables and also efficiency measures to energy poor households that doesn't have the capacity to invest in these kind of projects. So we are thinking of promoting, and we are doing so, 2 different models of energy sharing, which has different levels of public participation, let's say. On one hand, we have the promotion of renewable energy communities. Everyone in Europe is doing this, and we are doing it also. And we have other examples today explaining this model. So I want to explain you today about a compatible way of doing, which is promoting a public service of renewable energy self-consumption. There's the same logic in 2 models in behind, which is sharing energy in a radius of 2 kilometers from any installation, which is what is nowadays allowed in Spain. So for renewable energy communities, it will be the communities investing, managing, and operating the PV installations by themselves. So it's kind of more empowering, but also more ambitious. And this other model is the municipality who directly invests, operates, and distributes the renewable energy that is generated in municipal spaces. So in this case, the municipality can send the energy and allocate what is being generated between different types of users or consumers. What is being thinking now, it's we consider 3 different customers here. Customers, let's say users, because it's more like a public service approach. First is public buildings, municipal buildings, to have a direct self-consumption and having a return on investment. Secondly, keep a certain percentage for vulnerable households that will be identified through social services. And thirdly, we want also in the midterm to offer this energy for citizenship in general and SMEs. And this would work as a public service that is that works with a fee payment from citizens in a monthly or a yearly manner. We will see. So let's get to the next one. And this is the name of the first pilot project that we are promoting related with this public service of collective self-consumption. The name is Requiem in Power. We love the name. There's a very easy reason for that, and it's that we are putting PV plants in 5 cemeteries of the city. So what do we want to do with these installations? First, this is a picture of the coverage of every installation. As said, there's 5 different locations, and the circles are showing the radius of 2 kilometers around which you can share the energy. So only with 5 installations, we almost covering the whole city, not in terms of installed power, but yes, on spatial coverage. Then this is a small scheme for trying to explain how the model works. So we will have 5 installations that overall have an installed power of more than 2.3 megawatt installed power, which is a lot. And the plan now is to distribute the energy in this way. Initially, the 75% of the energy will go, as said, for direct self-consumption of municipal buildings, these schools, elderly centers, offices, within 2 kilometers from every installation. And this it's an easy way to have a return on the investment and make a solid business model behind. So the rest of the energy, the 25%, initially will go for vulnerable households. This can go for more than 800 households just for this first pilot. And the way here to include them is to first identify these people through the social services of the municipality. And the way to understand this internally is to have a new subsidy category within the catalog of subsidies that the municipality, the social workers can offer to the citizens. And as said, in the midterm, in the future, we also want to include non-vulnerable and SMEs through a fee payment system. And the percentage will probably come from this 75% that goes to direct self-consumption of the municipality. On the left down corner, there's this piggy image to show how the incentives are split. So on one hand, the municipality has a direct self-consumption and compensation for surplus. I want to explain the details behind. It's how direct self-consumption works in Spain. And this is really important, savings in municipal subsidies. Nowadays, the municipality is paying a lot of money every year for paying the bills and the debts of energy poor households. So this is a way to transform this cost into investment. So it becomes a green and social investment that has a preventive effect. So maybe if we stop just paying this money to the electric companies, let's do something in advance and invest in renewables and allocate them to the people that need it the most. That's the logic behind. So you don't only save money on your direct self-consumption, but also you're saving money for the whole city. And then on the other hand, of course, there's a direct benefit for households. So they have a direct savings on their bills every month. And so this is a completely win-win situation. Everybody wins with this model. Then let's go next. Which are the opportunities and the positive side of this model? First is to create an accessible model that can be accessible regardless of your financial situation, as is the municipality who does the investment. If you don't have the capacity to join an energy community and make the initial investment, you can participate in this model. And it's also more flexible considering your tenancy regime. So people sometimes don't want to engage with a project that goes for 25 years, but maybe this participation goes in a fee base, or a monthly or a yearly case. It's easier for them not to commit themselves on the long term. This is also really easy to scale, and it's really flexible. As there's a solid business model behind, we could implement this at the whole city scale, not only with the cemeteries, but with a lot of more surfaces that are in hands of the municipality. It, of course, helps driving a fair and inclusive energy transition with facts. So this is an actual implementation of projects that benefits everyone in the city. And what I think it's really important too, as it was said before, this creating a good acceptance of renewables. In this way, we can prove that we can, okay, 1 minute. We can increase the energy culture among citizens. So it's not only about using public goods, but also about activating and engaging citizens for deploying renewables on their own, on private roofs. And with just, let's go for the final slide. Okay, potential collaboration with the private sector. In this case, there's a huge need for the municipality to have technical support that goes with these kind of projects. So we need support on the project design, on the installation, a huge need on the management for the administrative and the technical budget, the inclusion of households in the scheme, replace them, activation of contracts and with the TSOs, the retailers. And a very important aspect too is the monitoring and digitalization. So to prove the impact of this model, we need to follow up the main energy, economic, social, environmental KPIs. And for that, we will rely a lot on developers and professionals from the sector. And I finish here. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Arturo. I really found your presentation quite interesting. I'm discovering right now, and I believe there is really a lot of opportunity for these collaboration that you mentioned between public and private sector, but also very interesting to see how this project can also support vulnerable households, and on the other hand, help municipality saving from direct energy support. So very, very interesting. So yeah, looking forward to our chat after the next presentation. Speaking about it, it's now my pleasure to welcome Aaron Lazarczyk, the VP Marketing and Growth and Clean Watts. Aaron, I can see a video right now. Aaron, I can see you now. Okay, very good. Please, Aaron, welcome, and the floor is yours.
Jonathan, thank you very much for the introduction. Hi, everybody. Really happy to be here. So let me just, if I can move the slides. Okay, Clean Watts. So yeah, we are a company based in Portugal, and we have a history in lots of energy management, but I'd say our biggest focus right now is energy community management. So just like a really quick introduction to the company. So right now we call them renewable energy communities. 130 of them contracted, equaling about 53 megawatts peak, and potentially for that it could be about 30,000 consumers. We're growing that as we speak. Active in a few countries, as I've got listed in the map. It kind of looked a little bit too big. We have also some business in Brazil, in a little bit in the United States, just in Rhode Island, as well as Japan, but different types of projects. Anyway, just like a little introduction to the company. Let's see here. So I don't want to go into too much detail about what is a renewable energy community. I think a lot of us have the understanding, but just maybe for a little bit of an image, one of the important things to discuss, and the last speaker I think mentioned this, Arturo, was the idea of collective self-consumption. So that's the model that works best in Portugal and Spain, and the importance of it, or what's really interesting about it, is that there's this inclusion of an anchor client in the model, or a main point of production. So I think it's important to point this out because from an economic like viability perspective, that's probably the model that works the best. And really what you're doing is you're overbuilding the solar system. You have a solar system in one particular place. Rooftop tends to be easier to permit, and then you're sharing that locally. And again, this is the model which tends to work in the countries I mentioned, simply because there's this kind of geographic restriction where I think in Portugal and Spain, it's like 2 kilometer radius. It could be up to 4, and really that's kind of what the main model that I'm working with. And yeah, of course, you also have the grid connection. It's important. These aren't islands. And I wanted to take a point to also mention this concept of part of the reason that there's this geographical restriction is because you have in these countries a reduced grid fees. So if you're only selling energy locally, you're sharing energy locally, you're not paying for high voltage, you're sometimes not paying for medium voltage. And that's really what makes the model economically viable. And I think it's super important to point out is that in order for energy communities to be successful, there needs to be a mechanism for them to make sense. And yeah, reduction of prices for people in like economic need, these kinds of things. It's super important to find a way that it makes sense. But in the case of reducing grid fees, there's certain countries that have energy community legislation. I'll point to 2, France and Czech Republic, that don't have this grid fees reduction. And the problem that arises is that it doesn't necessarily make sense to just share energy locally, because you still have to pay the same amount. So you could be just doing, like, for example, net metering, selling the energy produced from solar back to the retailer. And the point is that organizing an energy community can actually be quite challenging. There's a lot of complexity to it, and the reason that you'd want to do that, in addition to sort of social benefit, is the fact that there should be some financial benefit as well. And so, reduction in grid fees is really important. And, we're not just asking for, reduction in grid fees because, we want that. But in fact, if you're organizing energy locally in the community, the energy is, because of the laws of physics, it's going to the nearest off-taker. And so you're actually reducing grid congestion, and actually improves grid stability, and really there's this big challenge since the war in Ukraine. There's been tons of solar put on the grid, which is of course great. I'm a big fan of solar, obviously, but it does cause instability if it's not managed properly. And so there's a challenge, and so I think this is a big part of the reason why you're seeing delays in permitting, delays in offtake permits, and these kinds of things. And the reason is because the energy really needs to be managed properly. And if you're just putting on solar, it's not enough. You have to manage it. And so energy communities are just a wonderful way to organize it. But there needs to be this kind of local, essentially self-balancing energy communities. So a little bit about CleanWatts and what we do in a bit more detail is that we have really two main kind of branches of the company. So one that is mostly focused on Portugal as well as Spain, where we are building energy communities as well. A huge part of the challenge of scaling the energy transition is financing the energy transition. So we fund our own energy communities. We work with financiers. We have different models for funding energy community development, and a big part of that is kind of really a deep understanding of the model so that the risk is reduced, because it's actually a very low risk enterprise building an energy community, but it's such a nascent, it's such a new idea that a lot of traditional banks and these kind of institutions don't understand what's the risk profile involved in these kinds of things. So we have a lot of data which can show the risk and back up that they're really secure investments. And therefore, we in addition to building energy communities and in addition to financing energy communities, we also manage them with this platform. And so there's a kind of a bunch of different things we do. I don't want to go into too much detail about it, but on the bottom corner, you have energy efficiency. So thinking back to the anchor client, if you have a big installation or really big consumers, in addition to installing solar, the other thing you want to do is you want to make sure that they're efficient. So we have a really AI focused platform which is able to integrate lots of different sources of energy, and not sources of energy as well as components like EV chargers and these kinds of things, and really just make everything work together and make it super efficient in a way that we're reducing the needed demand. So the more demand you reduce in the anchor client, the more you can share locally. We have a platform as well, which is energy community management platform, which integrates with ERP. So you've got easy like invoicing for customers and just engagement with them and keeping everything together. And it's really a deep accounting of all the energy flows, whether it's consumed in the energy community, whether it's exported, whether it's exported to the community or to the grid, and self-consumption, and all of these things, accounting across the community. And then lastly, as well, we have a platform towards energy flexibility. And this is a bit of a challenge. For example, the ancillary services markets are not, and some flexibility markets aren't fully open in Spain and Portugal, where we're focused, but they are in other markets. Sweden is a good example, Germany as well, the UK. So in some markets, it's possible to kind of help support people kind of on an energy community level with these sort of energy flexibility incentives. And then in some countries, Spain and Portugal, it's possible to have support from this perspective of, reduced grid fees. And so, grouping everybody together into a community. And what we're hoping for in the future European legislation is for these 1 minute, both to come together. And really this is slowly happening. We're opening into the flexibility markets, but again, the importance of energy flexibility and arbitrage, factoring in batteries, these kinds of things, this all has to be managed, again, because just having solar panels isn't enough. It's also about managing that intelligently on the community level so that you are reducing the congestion. And then finally, last slide, just also kind of a call to action, because really, why we're here and why I wanted to say is that collaboration is really what we're looking for as well. I think really understanding like the history of innovation. No technology is invented by one person. The energy transition is something we're all here together supporting, and it supports a lot of people. And really, I just wanted to say we're looking for different companies to integrate with. We do a lot of things at CleanWatts, but maybe certain aspects we're not the best at, if it's a particular energy market in a given country, these kinds of things. So we're looking for people, companies, organizations who are looking to build energy communities. We have a lot of experience in that. We want to help accelerate the energy transition, and we want to integrate with as many technologies as possible and making it really efficient and engaging practice for everybody. So I'll end it there. Again, thank you very much.
Thanks to you, Aaron, for this great and inspiring presentation. We is good because I'm very happy we are quite on time. So very good for this. Thanks for all the speakers for also respecting the time. We now have 15 minutes to open the discussion and the questions to our guests from the audience and also to the panelists. So if you have any questions, please ask it in the Q&A. We will get the questions afterwards. So my first question I wanted to ask is maybe for Vladislav from Ian, our first speaker. You mentioned the ADG project in Spain. How easy it is to practically implement energy sharing, because we're talking about energy sharing project in Spain. What are the barriers, the enablers you did encounter during this project? And also one question about the market design. You know that there is one specific question about energy sharing in market design. Do you believe that such an agreement would facilitate the uptake of such projects in Spain and beyond, of course?
Right, thank you, Jonathan. So on the first question, when we started, we've made a market research on the regulatory transposition for energy sharing and collective self-consumption across Europe, and we've identified that Spain, along with, as was mentioned by Aaron, for example, Portugal, were the most advanced ones, advanced member states with the more or less clearly defined rules for engagement between the stakeholders in the energy sharing scheme. So I would say generally, of course, apart from what I've tried to describe in my presentation, establishing branding company as we've started from scratch, and also designing the strategy to acquire off-takers of this energy sharing. That has been, of course, has taken lots of energy and resources and engagement. But then I think it was a process that was well defined. So in terms of the challenges and main obstacles on the scale up phase, and again referring to the presentation of Aaron, quite spot on. So the connection to the grid of newly built PV plants is the main issue, because it takes at least on the island, it takes a lot of time. So we have some of the plants that are already built but not being connected for more than half a year. So getting this accepted by the DSO, and that has of course to do with DSOs having the last word to say about new connections, given their role of managing the stability in the network. So that was one of the main challenges. And the second one is that the process of establishing a so-called collective self-consumption scheme involved also retailers of every consumer joining the scheme, so that they had to accept those customers joining energy sharing, so that they would, as it's done in Spain, the residents would directly get direct savings on their energy bill from electricity that they consume from that PV plant. So that has to be also ticked by the retailer, and obviously it's an open market, so there are a number of retailers that need to be addressed and contacted by end consumer, and then of course in some cases they can delay the process. So that has been taking time, so that onboarding 170 members would take the time in terms of months to actually finalize the scheme allow every member to get the energy shared with them. In terms of the directive and updates to the EMD, I think there are some notes that partly would help to facilitate the process. For example, the introduction of energy sharing manager, which is the body that exists in Spain, but also for other countries that would support in terms of this energy manager representing all the members of the community on their behalf, then being able to update so-called in Spain sharing agreement. If one member leaves, another comes in, so that this process is facilitated, and we don't need to involve each and every member to then sign the new agreement. But then on the level of connecting to the grid and dialogue with the retailers, I think that still would remain. Thank you.
Thanks indeed for these very concrete elements on how it works to develop a project locally. I see that Arthur has a hand raised, and maybe Arthur, if I may, there is a comment from Stravula on the term of terminology, energy community versus self-consumption energy sharing. Maybe clarify a bit, make a distinction, and encourage to further distinguish between these two elements. If I don't know if it was the first intention of your intervention, but maybe also would be interesting to hear your view about it. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks a lot. That's indeed what I wanted to touch upon, because that what I mentioned is a very important point. I think we have to be very aware of how the term renewable energy community is defined in legislation and what kind of implications that has. So indeed, I mean, an energy community, of course, relies very much on the engagement of local citizens. It needs to be owned by local citizens, local authorities, and SMEs, and it needs to also be owned by, according to legislation at least, by actors who do not have as the main activity the energy market. So that is a very important element to consider from a legal Renewable Energy Directive point of view. So, of course, on the other hand, we also need to understand that I think while there are many citizens who
Arthur, I don't know if you can hear us, but from our eyes, you are frozen now. Arthur, can you hear us? Okay. I see that I think we have lost Arthur. We have a question about public-private partnership, public-private collaboration. So we've heard that a lot of public-private collaboration of municipality-led energy sharing services, what make them actual energy communities. So maybe a question for Arturo. So to what point can a public-private partnership be considered a community service? On your side, I mean, when you engage with private developers for technical work or specific work, what point do you consider that what you are offering and what citizens are engaged in should be labeled as a community? And I see that Arthur is back with us. I'm back with you, Arthur, right afterwards.
Okay. I see different roles depending on your model. If we speak about energy communities, what we understand is just what the directives say. Energy communities should be based on citizen-led initiatives, not related to the energy market, and really open participation, democratic control, and so on. So that's the kind of energy communities that we believe in. What's the role here from experts in energy, on the energy sector? Of course, these people, they are not experts on the energy management, so they need support on that. They need services. everything that was said by Aaron about the management that goes for flexibility, for efficiency, for optimization of everything that goes with how to make the best intelligent use of PV panels. We cannot ask that from citizens directly that has no idea. So I see a very direct collaboration here, a need from citizens. And speaking about the model that I was speaking about, the municipality has not the expertise also for managing these installations. So as far as the control and the ownership is from local actors, being the municipality or energy communities, I think there's a complete open doors for the participation, for the collaboration between public and private actors. But we have to be aware that if it's a company that goes to take the leading role and having full control, it's not an energy community, and it's not true, the true spirit of that. That's how we see it.
Good. Thanks, Arthur. I see you're looking forward to replying to this comment.
Yes,
So please,
thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. I mean, I don't think we should have, a too long discussion about this because the directives are pretty clear. Yeah. So I think what the colleagues mentioned makes absolute sense. We also have to be mindful, however, of the fact that, for many years already, the term energy communities has been used in so many different constellations, even prior to the directive, and it is understandable that there are different models out there. Now we do have European Renewable Energy Directive, which is quite clear that you need to have local ownership, or you need to have local governance, and you need to have participation, and very importantly, you need to have the legal entity. But why is this important from our point of view is that, of course, on one hand, you have the definition. That is important. You need to have some kind of trust and need some kind of clarity for consumers and participants of the entity. But also it has other kinds of implications because on the global kind of level, from a European perspective, or when you look at the member state regulator perspective, there are support schemes created specifically for renewable energy communities. And of course, these support schemes make use of public money. The ultimate idea here, of course, would be that those that get access to that public money via these public support schemes for renewable energy communities are ideally those who do not have other means to raise the necessary capital. So, of course, you can argue it's citizen-led. I think the directive itself is a bit more broad than that. It mentions, citizens. It mentions SMEs, public authorities who can be part of an energy community. Energy communities are a lot of different forms. They are not only energy cooperatives, that is very important to mention, but a lot of them are. But indeed, it is an important conversation to be having. I mean, we need to be first mindful of the history of the term. Ultimately, I think we're going towards the same aim, which is accelerating the renewable energy transition fast in a way that is fair. In all of these models that were presented now, I think the ultimate aim is the same: lower the electricity bill of end consumers, of citizens, vulnerable households. The question indeed is just whether in all cases, all the models that are out there necessarily correspond to the definition of the European Energy Directive. And this is an important conversation to be having. But I think ultimately, what is important to understand is that we're all working towards the same goal. There's many different actors who can be part of an energy community. But I think going forward, maybe if you're really serious about, supporting member states and the regulator specifically in transposing the relevant articles of the Renewable Energy Directive, as well as the Electricity Market Design Directive on citizen energy communities, we have to be quite clear in terms of what we mean in terms of definitions. It would certainly help, but I also want to make clear that ultimately I think we go to the same way, which is creating a fair renewable energy transition. It shouldn't be about the kind of battling who has the better kind of approach. I think ultimately it's about doing that, but doing the same way. But it would be indeed, of course, maybe interesting. Maybe someone from the colleagues from Clean Water, Ion, Vladislav, or Aaron, maybe would like to share your thoughts, if that's okay. Maybe on the governance element, like when you say members of the energy sharing scheme, for instance, does that mean members of the scheme itself, or does that mean member in terms of ownership of the asset? Like maybe you have some thoughts on those elements.
Yeah, we have literally 1 minute. Maybe I would turn to Aaron, because Aaron, you haven't answered the questions yet on the membership. If you want to tackle this very question very swiftly, and then we will move to conclusions.
Sure. Let's say membership in the energy community. There's people that finance the community. One of the things we do is crowd lending, and so therefore it's possible to be a kind of investor in the community as well as a member. Otherwise, people are just consumers and don't necessarily have ownership, but rather you just get a discount on your energy bill. We see around like 15% reduction. Of course, it depends on a lot of different factors. And yeah, so I think the kind of financial relationship and the kind of that's maybe the main factor in the kind of ownership model of the energy community and how you benefit from it or not.
Okay, thanks, Judy, Darren, for the clarification as well. I would really have loved to continue pursue this conversation further. I think it's a very thrilling topic, and we have a lot of very good questions. We have seen the questions, and they are very good. Unfortunately, we'll have to close this chapter, at least for now, this webinar. Thanks a lot to all our participants, to the intervention. Thanks to you also who are watching this webinar for your questions, for your participation. Please be aware that Solar Power Europe is currently also working on specific elements, specific guidance on energy communities with the aim of not only energy communities, but on engagement in general. We will keep you posted on the next steps, but please be aware that the questions, the discussions, the presentations of today's webinar would be fed into our discussion. So this was also very helpful to help define the boundaries and the most relevant questions for our work. And that being said, I want to thank you again and wish you a great rest of the day, and stay tuned for more Solar Cities webinar. Thanks again. Thank you very much to all the speakers.